go ahead and get started.
That's all set.
Great. Good afternoon and welcome back to SUNY's Global Accessibility Awareness Day. My name is Nasli Kirkchin. My pronouns are she, hers. I serve as the SUNY System EIT Accessibility Officer and Coordinator of Non-Traditional Student Services at SUNY Administration in Albany, New York. For those new to the SUNY system, SUNY is the State University of New York. We are the largest comprehensive system of higher education in the United States, with 64 campuses providing education to every corner of the state. Today, I'll provide an overview of our digital accessibility efforts at SUNY, and I'll also post a presentation to this link in the chat at the end. All the resources mentioned throughout the presentation are linked within the presentation, so you'll be able to access them. So some fast facts before we get into the meat of what's happening at SUNY. 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability. It's a pretty sizable body of people in the United States, and globally, approximately 1/5 of the estimated total of people experience some type of disability. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, 19% of undergraduate students disclose to higher education institutions, slightly lower for graduate students, but they tend to be non-traditional students, older students and veterans. And SUNY specifically serves 43% of self-identified college students enrolled in New York colleges and universities. This does not take account for the students who choose not to self-identify to our campus disability or accessibility services offices, making accessibility even more important for all of us to address. Moreover, we have some other SUNY-wide campus surveys or local campus surveys that are administered that consistently show that there are more students with disabilities enrolled at our institutions than formally registering or requesting accommodations. Hopefully, some of you have a foundational understanding of what accessibility is. But just in case you don't, accessibility is the extent to which information can be perceived by all, with or without the use of assistive technology. SUNY's mission is to provide the quality educational services with the broadest possible access. And so digital accessibility naturally aligns with our SUNY for All initiative. You may also be aware there's been a substantial legal shift in institutional obligations for how disability laws like the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehab Act of 1973, of how these laws operate in the context of digital accessibility. With the 24/7 nature of online technology and, of course, our transition to remote operations during COVID, the expectations for accessibility have increased. Legally speaking, accessible means individuals with disabilities are able to independently acquire the same information, engage in the same interactions, and enjoy the same services within the same time frame as non-disabled individuals with substantially equivalent ease of use. Accessibility is a shared responsibility. It is not the sole responsibility of the Disability or Accessibility Services Office to maintain accessible living and learning environments. The reasonable accommodations framework that most of you may be familiar with, which these offices are associated with, does not apply to digital accessibility. It really takes a village to sustain digital accessibility. Throughout our efforts, we've leveraged key stakeholders from diverse departments and positions to ensure the appropriate amount of influence and subject matter expertise are represented. Some of the examples provided on this slide include colleagues from academic affairs, counsel, legal counsel, our business offices, information technology, distance education. I accidentally put disability accessibility services twice, our diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, marketing and communications, libraries, centers for teaching and learning, and more. This slide shows a timeline for our policy creation and adoption process beginning in 2017 with the unanimous passing of the Board of Trustees policy in June 2019. So, to comply with this paradigm shift and support an inclusive environment for our visitors and campus community members with disabilities, the Office of the Provost established an EIT, or Electronic and Information Technology Accessibility Committee, to examine existing case law, technical standards such as the WCAG standards, which stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And we also looked at model policies at universities across the United States to inform our policy development. We had a steering committee and numerous subcommittees tasked with identifying benchmarks for each standard we developed. EIT covers a wide range of areas, from public-facing websites to password-protected logins for various web-based applications, like our learning management systems or student information systems, any digital form of communication, email, flyers, and the like, library resources, digital signage, clickers, lecture capture technologies, and more. SUNY's EIT accessibility policy was established to proactively address digital environments and support a robust digital accessibility program. The policy outlines a comprehensive, balanced framework for prioritizing digital accessibility through several key requirements and the creation of standards. And so our key requirements are that each campus and system administration will have an EIT accessibility officer. Each campus and system will create an accessibility plan, and each campus and system will use the standards devised by the EIT Accessibility Committee. And those standards are the Web Accessibility Standards. This standard is primarily geared towards programmers and developers. The Digital Content Accessibility Standards, which is broad in scope for any content creators. The Classroom Accessibility Standards, which regards technology in the classroom, such as assistive listening systems. The Library Accessibility Guidelines is all about supportive measures and tools available to support patrons with disabilities. And lastly, the Procurement Accessibility Conformance Standards, which outlines a series of tasks to incorporate accessibility in the procurement process. All of these standards are rooted in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0 AA, the 2010 ADA Standards for Accessible Design, and other practices that we saw mentioned across various resolution agreements related to digital accessibility. The policy final report that we delivered to the Board of Trustees and the 5 standards, what all the benchmarks are publicly available on the SUNY website. It's SUNY, suny.edu/accessibility. What's outlined on this slide are the core elements for devising a digital accessibility strategy. Each plan that campuses and system administration devised had to provide details on how they would achieve the benchmarks outlined in the 5 standards, incorporating these core elements. These elements are essential to achieving the goals of the policy. We needed to make sure that there was appropriate authority and responsibility designated to support accountability measures, an awareness raising campaign to effectively communicate the EIT accessibility expectations across all campus divisions and departments. Design is all about ingraining accessibility into the creation of web and technology resources. This could also be broadly applied to the design of policies and procedures and things like that. Procurement is a little bit of a double here. We have a procurement standard and a procurement element, but that is super important. And so we wanted to doubly emphasize that, incorporating accessibility as a requirement within the purchasing process applied to both centralized and decentralized purchasing activities, such as P cards. Monitoring compliance is important for us. This is a policy rooted in compliance as well. And so we need to have methods for monitoring our progress on the public facing websites or the LMS or other areas in our digital landscape. And then training is critically important for all campus personnel who develop, create, adopt, purchase, and maintain EIT environments. Our policy implementation efforts are ongoing. Once the policy was adopted by SUNY's Board of Trustees, an EIT accessibility implementation team was created. We developed strategies for local plan creation and provided extensive professional development to help campuses fully understand the SUNY accessibility standards. Once the campus plans were submitted this past December, a review committee was formed to evaluate the campus plans to ensure that they met the minimum requirements of the board policy. This also helped us gain insight regarding the maturity in execution across the different standard areas. We found that, a lot of us are way further along in web accessibility compliance than perhaps less mature in the development of including accessibility in the purchasing process, for example. And also it helped us explore opportunities for collaboration so that as a system, we can maintain consistency and improve overall effectiveness. Our students can transfer back and forth to all these campuses, right? And so we want to make sure that we're providing the same kind of stance, training, communication, et cetera, so that their experience is positive whatever SUNY campus they choose. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we also relied on guidance from the Department of Education, the Association of Higher Education and Disability, and the New York State Disability Services Council to inform campuses on how to best support students, faculty, and professional staff in the transition to remote instruction and student services. The SUNY Disability Services professionals engaged in monthly calls to elevate concerns and suggestions for maintaining academic continuity for students with disabilities. And again, we offered extensive webinars with the help of the SUNY Center for Professional Development on designing accessible documents, presentations, videos, and more. Shortly, as Provost Sandvik mentioned earlier this morning, an advisory group will be established to make long-standing recommendations as we revise our general education standards, examine updated industry standards, and advise on policy effectiveness. SUNY has made numerous investments to support education and training opportunities for SUNY faculty, staff, and students. We've been using Blackboard Ally since 2017. And so we have 44 campuses currently using Ally, with several more that are in the process of signing on. And we have campuses using Ally in Blackboard Learn, Canvas, and Moodle. It's been a really great educational tool for faculty to see what some of the things they're uploading, how inaccessible they may be. There's a picture on the slide of Blackboard Ally on several different device types. And, there's a picture of the score of, how inaccessible something that was uploaded was. And there's also a really neat alternative format feature that our students have been using so that, if a professor uploads a document, but they want it in an audio format, they can convert and download it to the format of their liking. And so it's been a really, really great opportunity for us to monitor the individual course level accessibility to the campus-wide level accessibility and provide students choice in how they want to learn. Also, in the spring of 2019, SUNY launched a system-wide pilot program with Deku Systems to provide accessibility training across all SUNY campuses and system administration. Deku University is an online asynchronous training platform that provides training on a wide range of topics, from customer service and interacting with individuals with disabilities to very technical website accessibility courses to accessibility program management and far more. We have nearly 4,000 people, active employees across over 50 campuses in various roles, completing these courses to support their campus plans and overall awareness. To grow expertise across SUNY, we've established several means of communication through the formation of a SUNY EIT accessibility listserv and various other platforms such as Facebook Workplace and SUNY Blue, which are intranet and only available to SUNY employees. And then we recently started exploring using Slack Workspace to chat back and forth informally about products that we're using and how we're using contract language and the like. And so these are some of the community resources that we've developed to facilitate conversation and create community. We also have some cohorts that have been established to address some special areas such as library accessibility, EIT procurement, and math accessibility. So the library accessibility cohort is comprised of colleagues from the SUNY Library Shared Services and campus volunteers who expressed an interest in learning more about enhancing accessibility in the libraries. And so there are individuals in that cohort that have been reviewing VPATs for widely used repositories, library databases, and they're using a testing methodology adapted from the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So they've been reviewing VPATs through verifying claims made on the VPATs, the voluntary product accessibility templates, which is the documentation that vendors complete to demonstrate their accessibility conformance to the technical standards, the WCAG. And they're also using the same testing methodology for vendors that don't have VPATs. And so it's been a really great cohort in creating a consistent review process and rubrics and toolkits. And the toolkit I included in a link on this slide as well. They created a wonderful toolkit for incorporating accessibility into procurement. And so there's a ton of helpful tips for reviewing documentation like VPATs, communicating with vendors, and more. Currently, we're working on processes for conducting exceptions on a case-by-case basis, rubrics for associating risk with the barriers identified in the products, and creating equally effective alternate access plans. The EIT accessibility cohort seeks to establish uniform accessibility language for purchases, build a centralized repository for vetted EIT, and develop standardized forms, templates, and a testing methodology to evaluate third-party products so that we may be able to share this information and reduce the duplication of effort. This is nationally and at SUNY an ongoing challenge. Vendors don't always have the latest or most accurate description of their products' conformance with these standards, and we have a responsibility to examine the barriers of all this third-party technology that we heavily rely on. And then we also need to be conscious and practical of the contracts that already exist and monies invested to support the business needs of our institutions. So we're figuring out how to balance all of these things. Many of our campuses use the same publisher materials, courseware, and other technologies to deliver instruction and student services. And so this is an area where we strongly believe we can collaborate together and as a system collectively encourage companies to enhance the accessibility of their products and services. And so this group is representative of several people on the call, EIT officers, IT professionals, procurement specialists, instructional designers, marketing communications, and disability services professionals. And we hope to inform a future shared service. We also have a math accessibility cohort because there was an expressed need for understanding the nuances of math accessibility and to provide training for faculty who create math. We also seek to bridge the knowledge of math accessibility for instructional support staff and disability services practitioners, we are interested in finding workflows to improve the creator and user experience. So our goal is quite simple, but actually kind of hard to understand the process of creating and delivering accessible math. And so we've been gathering information on how math is created and which tools are used at different SUNY institutions, examining the barriers and solutions to create accessible math, and propose recommendations for individualized solutions for print disabled students. Obviously, there are other disabilities for which math accessibility may impact, but for right now, we're keeping our focus on print disabled students. And so we hope to create a living training resource for institutions to use and present a workshop at the Otter training later this summer. Now I'm going to highlight some of the themes, noteworthy practices, and exemplary campus initiatives happening on our campuses related to EIT accessibility. All of our campuses have their own cultures, resources, and knowledge of accessibility. It varies tremendously. And so we're all learning together, but creating a unique plan for our individual institutions. And some of the common approaches articulated in the campus plans include developing specific policies or incorporating accessibility within existing policies, whether that's a social media policy or a procurement policy. A lot of campuses have a system-wide committee or working group to drive a lot of the work of these plans. Campuses are designating liaisons across different departments and colleges, which is a really effective approach. And then some are explicitly including co-curricular accessibility, such as student affairs specific accessibility, recreation, and lastly, creating some more layered plans that distinguish things like instructional versus communicative digital content. So a lot of really great work going on. It's extremely impressive. Um, as I mentioned before, accessibility is a shared responsibility, and the strongest plans assigned responsibilities across the institution and not just to the EIT accessibility officer or that working group or committee. The plans are far reaching beyond the baseline requirements outlined in our standards. For example, the inclusion of accessibility in campus social media accounts, really important. Our students are on Instagram, they're on Twitter. We need to make sure that whatever we're sharing on our web pages is also accessible in social media or accessible somewhere. Many campuses have staff and various tools to proactively support an accessible online environment, from website crawlers to guided testing, browser extensions, to review the accessibility of web-based applications. Beyond hiring or designating an EIT accessibility officer, numerous campuses have began including accessibility duties into job descriptions, and some have also hired students to support remediation and education efforts. Other practices include incorporating accessibility into broader strategic plans like the campus diversity plan or the enrollment plan, which I thought was so neat and wonderful because disability is diversity. It's something we should be including in all of the respective area plans. And so while this is a digital accessibility plan specifically, I think it's really important to include disability in other campus plans. And then lastly, requiring training for various roles, such as web editors or P card holders, the credit card holding folks who buy things on the internet. And, this slide shares a handful of model campus initiatives. It is not exhaustive by any means. There's a number of campuses that have teaching online certification programs. Numerous campuses provide drop-in hours and provide course reviews for accessibility. Some even do the remediation for faculty, and others teach faculty how to create their own accessible courses. I believe Dr. Haramalik mentioned the UDL Academy, which is the intense in-person training for the faculty at Onondaga Community College. SUNY Oswego has a fabulous faculty accessibility fellow program. I highly recommend everyone go check that out, because I really think that that's the best way to get faculty on board. And I'll provide the link to that shortly as well. They also had a 10-day accessibility challenge at their campus, which was a really neat, marketing and interdepartmental strategy to get people trained quickly as we transition to remote. And also, this is not going away, so it's important to know all of this good accessibility effort moving forward. They also have some tutorials on their webpage. So, if you're looking for information about the 10-day challenge, the faculty fellows, and even some tutorials for content designers, they have a really great website that you can peruse at your leisure. And I think I have 2 minutes, but I'm happy to take questions offline. And I'll put the link to this presentation and my email in the chat. And thank you very much again for your time and interest in coming today. It means a lot to me and everyone else at SUNY. All right, thanks for including the links, Sean, to the Oswego challenge. It's awesome.